The further we get from the NFL draft, the more concrete our player takes. With the summer months fast approaching, I wanted to share some of the guys I'm higher on than most for 2024. Here are 5 guys skyrocketing up my rankings. Steelers running back Jaylen Warren.
To shake him free. Running play for Warren. Jaylen Warren rips through for the touchdown.
It feels like we've been dealing with the Steelers split backfield for way longer than we have, but it has been 2 seasons of Najee Harris capped out by his teammate. A former undrafted free agent out of Oklahoma State, Jaylen Warren didn't seem like much of a threat to anybody heading into the summer of 2022. The Pittsburgh depth chart was littered with replacement-level backups, including Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland, but Warren ascended to the RB2 role by the team's Week 1 kickoff. Though the role was negligible for fantasy purposes, he finished the season top 10 among fellow rookie running backs in rushing yards, yards per carry, and receptions. His role in the offense would end up ramping up toward the end of the season, and that rolled over into his usage in 2023. Not only did he finish 3rd on the team with the 72 targets, he continued to eat into Najee's ground game. Harris handled 71% of the team's carries in 2022, but dropped to 63% last year, while Warren jumped from 20% to 37%. With Warren providing a far more efficient option over Harris, there isn't much reason to think that 60-40 split is going to decrease, and there's a new OC in town who is well-versed in using 2 running backs extensively. Through Arthur Smith's 3 seasons in Atlanta, his leading running back garnered 44%, 46%, and 47.5% of the team's running back carries, with that final number being Bijan Robinson, who the team had just selected with the 8th overall pick. Though I don't think the Steelers are going to let Arthur Smith come into town and phase Najee Harris out of the offense, I think there's a chance that the 2 running backs' opportunities could be even closer than they were last season. If that does end up being the case, Warren could outright score more fantasy points than his teammate, even with fewer touches. Among 63 qualifying running backs last year, Warren ranked 3rd in yards created after contact, 4th in yards per carry, 8th in yards per route run, and 1st in broken plus missed tackles forced. He was sneakily one of the best backs in the league, and now the tandem gets a huge boost to the offensive line thanks to some huge additions through the NFL draft. Weighing the low-end outcomes with Warren's current 8th-round draft capital just makes me like him even more. He finished last season as Fantasy's RB 33.5 PPR points per game while handling the aforementioned 37% rushing workload. It's hard to call Jaylen Warren a breakout when everybody already knows who he is, but I think there's a real chance he finishes the season as a fantasy RB2.
And with the 46th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select Jonathon Brooks.
Panthers running back Jonathon Brooks. It's understandable that fantasy managers want immediate production from their running backs, particularly when we've never seen that running back taken an NFL field. But the consensus ranking over at Fantasy Pros currently has the first running back taken in the NFL draft as the RB 38. That seems ridiculous to me. Brooks was ultra productive in his 1 year as a starter after minimal playing time in his first 2 years at Texas, due entirely to sharing backfields with Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. When given his opportunity, Brooks peeled off 8 straight games with at least 98 rushing yards, averaging 128 per game between weeks 3 and 11. The feel-good breakout campaign was sadly cut short during his final 100-yard performance of the season as he tore his ACL against TCU on November 11th. The injury puts his Week 1 availability into question as he was forced to miss rookie minicamp, but apparently expects to be back by training camp. His landing spot is admittedly a questionable one if you look at what the Panthers did in their first season with Bryce Young at the helm. They finished 31st in scoring offense and dead last in yardage as the rookie quarterback struggled mightily with one of the league's worst supporting casts. On top of that, the offensive line finished near the bottom in most metrics, including 29th in adjusted line yards and 27th in running back yards before contact. The Panthers did what they could to identify these issues, including the additions of Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis in the middle of the line, along with the insertion of Deontay Johnson and first-round selection Xavier Legette to the wide receiver room. Technically, Brooks sits behind veteran options Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard on the depth chart, but it's hard to imagine that will be an issue once the rookie is in pads. Not only does this new regime have no ties to Hubbard, they also allowed Sanders to be completely phased out of the offense by season's end. When Jonathon Brooks is on the field, he will undoubtedly operate as the team's RB1. Fantasy drafters should be patient and enjoy the stretch run production in both redraft and best ball leagues. If he really is ready for a full workload during opening weekend, we should just take that as an added bonus to his value. Lions wide receiver Jameson Williams.
Jameson Williams, the speedster, has a block. Williams cuts up, 25, 20, still on his feet. Jameson Williams.
It's been a wild first 2 seasons for the former Alabama receiver. After tearing his ACL in a long reception in the national championship game, Williams was forced to miss the vast majority of his rookie season, with with his only catch being a 41-yard touchdown. He only ran 37 routes through that 2022 season, but looked poised to make a splash as a sophomore on what looked to be an ascending offense. Things took a turn for the worse when it was announced that Williams would be suspended for the first 4 games of the 2023 season due to violating the NFL's gambling policy. When he returned to the field in Week 5, the Lions were more or less using him in a rotational role. Over the next 9 games, he ran less than 20 routes and accrued less than 20 yards in 6 of them, while being held catchless in 2. The first real flashes of success finally came between weeks 15 and through the playoffs, including a touchdown in the NFC Championship game. In that stretch run, Williams accounted for 25 targets, nearly doubling his career total up to that point, while finishing second on the team with his 25% air yard share, and led Detroit with a 14.7 average depth of target. Though the corresponding production wasn't anything incredible, that usage should give us an idea of how the team views their former first-round pick moving forward. In a recent coach presser, head coach Dan Campbell had this to say, quote, "If you said give me one player that is the most improved this offseason, JMO would be that guy right now. He's a man on a mission, and I'm just going to leave it at that," end quote. Optimistic coach speak runs rampant this time of year, but the team said just as much with their roster moves as Campbell has been saying this offseason. Through the NFL draft, the Lions didn't spend a single day 1 or day 2 selection on the offensive side of the ball. And when they eventually did spend on that side of the ball, they invested in the offensive line and a running back who worked with the safeties at the NFL Scouting Combine. On top of that, they allowed Josh Reynolds to walk in free agency, with Jameson Williams set to line up in 2 wide receiver sets with Amon-Ra St. Brown. For all of the knee-biting quotes and perception that the Lions are a run-first team, they finished 2023 with the 9th most pass attempts and 2nd most passing yards, while maintaining a league average pass-to-run ratio in neutral situations. They also just signed quarterback Jared Goff to a 4-year, $212 million extension in May, so they presumably have no issues running the offense through him. Williams is set up to make a fantasy impact that we've been waiting for since he was taken with the 12th overall selection. According to consensus rankings, he's a borderline wide receiver 4 or 5 in the wide receiver 50 range. His upside outcome is way ahead of that, and he deserves consideration before his current late 10th round ADP. Bears wide receiver Keenan Allen.
Coming. Tannehill breaks free. He was hitting the helmet. He throws to the end zone. Touchdown. Keenan Allen got separation.
Father Time waits for no man, but the longtime Chargers great is sure keeping him at bay. Though the 32-year-old receiver has had some nicks and bruises along the way, he's been a model of consistency since his former franchise moved from San Diego to Los Angeles. Maybe it was the bright lights of LA, but he's eclipsed 95 receptions in all but one of his last 7 seasons, while averaging 1,130 yards. Enter the Chicago Bears. With the new Jim Harbaugh regime looking to clean house of nearly anyone on the offensive side of the ball above 25 years old, Allen was traded to the Bears for a 4th-round pick, in a move that apparently blindsided the veteran wideout. For Chicago, they presumably knew for months in advance that they were looking to insulate their future 1st-round pick, and Allen was one of the first pieces of that puzzle. They would also sign running back DeAndre Swift, tight end Gerald Everett, and add depth to their offensive line. The pairing of DJ Moore and Allen was already a nice introductory receiving room for Caleb Williams, but they also grabbed Rome Odunze with their 9th overall pick. While the team clearly has long-term visions of Williams and Odunze growing together, it wouldn't be too much of a surprise if the rookie wideout was more of a complementary role to the 2 veterans. Bears wide receiver coach Chris Beatty even said as much. Quote, "Keenan Allen is a coach's dream. Moore is one of the best in the world with the ball in his hands. Allen works 3rd down like no one's business. Rome can complement them by being contested catcher outside the numbers." The fear for the protagonist of Odunze's first-year usage is how often the team may run 2 tight end sets with Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett. New offensive coordinator Shane Waldron ran the 4th highest rate of multiple tight end formations from 2022 to 2023 with the Seattle Seahawks. This helps to explain why their rookie wide receiver, Jackson Smith-Njigba, ran nearly 100 fewer routes than Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf in 2023. Rome Odunze will surely see the field plenty this season, but it won't be for the sake of Keenan Allen. Rather, the veteran could very easily lead the team in target share while operating as an underneath and chain-moving option for Caleb Williams. And while he likely won't have as many explosive games as DJ Moore, Keenan will be a great floor option and an easy target in PPR leagues. According to ADP over Underdog Fantasy, Allen has taken the biggest drop of any rookie not named Rashee Rice in the top 50 wide receivers from pre to post NFL draft. He's essentially dropped an entire round to the wide receiver 31, which is right about where his consensus ranking is on Fantasy Pros. He may be another year older, and he did miss the last 4 games of last season, but I'm still fine with taking a wide receiver 2 at a wide receiver 3 price. Father Time be damned. Bills tight end Dalton Kincaid.
Pressure again. Runs away from it, throws on the run, caught!
Current ADP fluctuates wildly depending on where you are looking for Kincaid, ranging from the TE8 to the TE4 in FFPC drafts, which are tied in premium leagues. But where I see that I'm certainly higher on the sophomore is in consensus rankings that have him as the TE7 behind Trey McBride, George Kittle, and Kyle Pitts. While I'm still very much a fan of McBride, even with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm not so sure about the other two options. It could be argued that Kincaid has had the best offseason for fantasy purposes across the entirety of the position. After 4 100-plus reception seasons with the Bills, Stephon Diggs was traded off to the Houston Texans for a second-round pick. On top of Diggs moving on, Gabe Davis also walked in free agency, leaving another 78 targets and 45 receptions behind. When the dust settled, the Bills were missing the highest air yard share, the second most targets, and the third highest percentage of targets from within the opponent's 10-yard line. Though the team did select Keon Coleman in the second round of the NFL draft, the rest of their offseason additions were spearheaded by Curtis Samuel and a bunch of rotational wide receiver fours. Kincaid still has Dawson Knox to contend with in the tight end room, but that seemed to be less of an issue as the season wore on, including in the most pivotal games of the season. In the 4 weeks between week 17 and the divisional round of the playoffs, the rookie averaged 6.5 targets, 4.8 receptions, and 68.8 yards per game. More importantly, he averaged nearly 11 half PPR points per game, while Knox averaged 4.4 fantasy points in that same span, even though he scored 2 touchdowns. There's a very real chance that Dalton Kincaid leads the team in targets during the 2024 season. I think he's much closer to the elite tier of tight ends in fantasy than he is to the Kyle Pitts and David Njoku's of the game.